Big controversial issue, safe injection sites. The U.S. just got the first 2 sanctioned ones. Where are they? How are they working? What do they do there? And what cities are they coming to next? Let's get into it. Kate Ruggs, the Soberdog, coming at you. Before I get into it, Soberdogs doesn't promote or condone any drug use. Please seek professional medical help if you have an addiction. Also, Patreon of the week, Yana Casper. She's awesome. Yana's done so much for the recovery community in Rochester and beyond. She started Recovery Fitness with some friends. Thank you for helping us out, supporting us, Yana. You're freaking awesome. And if you want to become a Patreon, link in the description. Safe injection sites. Very controversial, but all the data coming in from the other countries that have them, they're effective. Up until the end of November, only one spot in the U.S. that we know of had a safe injection site, and it was totally not regulated, not allowed. The city just said, okay, go ahead, but they kept it quiet. Kind of like weed up to a couple years, well, even still to now. Federally illegal, but multiple states legalized it, and it's this back and forth battle. Same thing with the safe use sites. This city and state, which I'm going to get into in a second, legalized it and is allowing them to do it, but federally it's still illegal. So up until now, there's only been a couple pop-up places small. Now, New York City, Manhattan, 2 safe injection sites opened up the end of November. Both these sites were needle exchanges prior, so not a ton of adjusting had to be done. Now they're safe use sites. What is a safe use site? It's a place addicts can go where they bring their own drugs. Everything else is supplied. They get clean needle, clean caps, cotton, water, pipe, whatever they need, a little cubicle, a little area they can go in and use. If something happens, there's medical staff there, nurses, doctors, volunteers, addiction counselors, whatever, that reverse their overdose and help them. Very controversial. A lot of people are against it. A lot of people are for it. I see both sides. I'll tell you where I stand in a minute. So these 2, one is in East Harlem and one is in Washington Heights. One's ran by nonprofit New York Harm Reduction Educators. The other one's ran by Washington Heights Corner Project. Those 2 nonprofits are actually merging to create On Point New York City. Why is this so important in New York City? Every 4 hours, somebody dies of a drug overdose in New York City. That's a lot. That's a high number. These 2 spots opened November 30th in New York City. By 2 p.m. on day 1, 40 people had come in and used, 2 overdosed, and both were revived and brought back. When interviewed and asked about it, the staff said that's 2 people that are now given a second chance at life. And that's very true. Now, what actually happens at these places? So what they look like is they're all different, but basically you walk in, there's like all these little cubicles, and each cubicle, it's just like a little booth. You know, you just sit in and then the people use. But also what they do, which is very important, this was like the needle exchange in Baltimore. When I used to live in Baltimore, they had a needle exchange van that drove around the city and parked at different spots. When you went to changing your needles, they didn't just give you new needles and take your old ones. They would ask you questions. They would talk, see if you're interested in rehab, see if you're interested in meetings. They'd give you juice and stuff to hydrate you, a bag of bread and crackers. They'd ask you questions, where you live and if you have somewhere safe to live, all those type of things. In a huge one, they do basic medical checkups. So at these places and the ones in New York City right now, they'll do blood pressure and they'll do a physical and they'll, see how people are, give them basic, medical things that they just neglect, because unfortunately we're in the middle of addiction. We don't care about anything but getting high. But if I'm there using and somebody says, can I do your blood pressure? Why don't you drink some apple juice? I'm going to do it. Sure. Okay. While I'm here, I'll do it all. That's huge and can help a lot of people. Now, like I said earlier, they supply everything for you except the drugs. They will not supply the drugs. Some other countries have done it where they supply the drugs. That's how they are. US won't yet. Why is it so important to provide these clean things? A lot of people I've talked to, some people have this understanding that disease and addiction is in this bubble. Assholes, for lack of a better word. Let them get diseases and kill themselves. Who gives a shit? Of course, I would like choice words to say to those people, but other people who aren't that ignorant, who just said like, oh, well, if they get diseases, it kind of stays with them, right? No. Addiction is not a bubble. Both during my addiction and after, I dated girls, some who were in addiction, some who weren't. Worked at restaurants. Now that I'm out, I have a girlfriend now, I date. When somebody in addiction gets a disease, it spreads to the whole community with sex, I worked at restaurants, people get cut. There's just all these different ways. So keeping disease less in the addiction community keeps it less in the overall community. Also less money on healthcare spent. It's just general better practice. So they provide the clean needles, the clean cotton, the clean all that for these people. When I was using here in Rochester, there was a needle exchange we could go to and get clean needles. Because of that, I was able to never get diseases. That's huge, Now that I'm in recovery, I don't pass on any diseases because I don't have any because of the things that were available. These safe use sites are still federally illegal, though. The New York City mayor has approved it. The governor knows what's going on and basically gave her okay. But federally, they're still illegal under the crack house law statute, which states it's illegal to own, rent, operate a location with the purpose of selling or using illegal drugs. So this is going to be one of those things like marijuana where federally it's illegal, but states and cities are doing their own thing, and we'll see how it goes back and forth and plays out. We don't have a lot of facts and data on how great or how good these places work. We do from other countries. Canada has had them for a little bit, Portugal, but we don't have a ton here. Now in the US, there's been pop-up ones that were not sanctioned at all, but the cities they were in were just kind of like, all right, go ahead. We're just not going to have anything to do with it. One of these was in a certain undisclosed city in the US for 5 years. Over that period, 10,514 people came in and used drugs, injected specifically. 33 of those people overdosed on opioids during that period. All 33, the overdose was reversed and they were brought back. That's huge. That's 33 people that were given a second chance. A lot of those people hopefully got into recovery. They were given that second chance. That's why I think these are, so important. Now, what are the people against it saying? I'm sure we can kind of assume that they don't want people that are either against drugs in general, or the one lady who lives in one of these neighborhoods was saying, I'm not against what you guys are doing. What I'm against is this neighborhood already has more rehabs and methadone clinics per capita than, I don't know, it was like top 5 in the US. She's like, so we have all these clinics and all these rehabs which attract crime and drugs. That's the reality. I'm an addict. I'm not going to sit here and bullshit. Yes, I'm all for things for recovery, but the people there getting methadone, unfortunately, all of them aren't there for the right reasons. In Baltimore, when I lived there, if you needed drugs, you knew you could go to that methadone clinic at 8 a.m. Half the people in that line had drugs for sale. So I get what she's saying. She's saying this is just one more place that there's now going to attract drug users, drug dealers, and just, quote, riffraff. So I get where people aren't too happy about it. Maybe this is something that could be solved with 2-3 security guards outside, I think there's a balance. I think they're good. I'm for safe use sites, but I get where people are like okay with it until it comes to their neighborhood. I understand, when I was in addiction, I wasn't a great person. I did some shady stuff. Don't think that, the people suffering from addiction are terrible people, but while they're in addiction, they don't do some great stuff. And I understand that. I see both sides. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. What cities are they coming to next? Here's some of the cities that this has been brought up in their legislative sessions and with their governments. San Francisco, LA, Seattle, Portland, actually both Portlands, Oregon and Portland, Maine. On a real small scale, it was brought up once, I guess, at a legislative session in Miami, but I don't think it went any further. And then it was brought up for Houston and Dallas, but they said that it was shot down right away. So those are some of the places considering it next. In Philly. Philly was another big one that wants to do it. Those, who knows, maybe they'll get it, maybe they won't. What do you think? Let me know. That's all about safe use sites. K Ruggs, the Soberdog, and I'm out. See ya.